It was crazy how much I'd go out and be like, wow, I just ran longer than I did the last time and my heart rate was lower and I don't feel completely wrecked. So it was just very noticeable how much more resilient everything was after taking the biologic. And then finally in a position to be like, all right, let's see what's possible. Let's see how far I can take this. And a half marathon seemed like the way to go.
Welcome to Beyond the Wheeze, the podcast where perseverance meets potential. I'm Josh Realm, public speaker, marathon runner, asthma advocate, and your host as we explore the intersection of health, fitness, and resilience. Whether you're managing asthma, chasing a new personal best, or simply looking for inspiration, Beyond the Wheeze is here to show you that no challenge is too great to overcome. Together, we'll uncover stories, insights, and strategies to help you push beyond your limits. It's time to breathe deeply, move forward, and unlock your true potential, one step at a time.
Welcome to Beyond the Wheeze. Today's guest is someone whose journey exemplifies resilience, transformation, and the power of taking control of one's health, especially when faced with severe asthma. Liz Radinovic is a personal trainer, health coach, nutrition coach, and asthma athlete. Based in Columbus, Ohio, Liz's story is both inspiring and relatable for anyone dealing with asthma or other health challenges. For 15 years, Liz struggled with uncontrolled asthma, which made running long distances impossible. Between viral flare-ups, corticosteroids, and a lack of proper asthma management, her life felt like an endless cycle of illness and setbacks. But as Liz will share with us today, a turning point came when she was prescribed a biologic medication that changed her health dramatically. Not only did it improve her asthma management, but it also allowed her to return to something she loves, running. In fact, she completed a half marathon in October and has plans for many more races, including a full marathon. Liz's story is about much more than just running. She's an advocate for better asthma care, an accomplished speaker, and a passionate coach who helps clients find balance, improve their health, and achieve sustainable fitness goals without the stress of dieting or excessive cardio. With that being said, Liz, welcome to Beyond the Wheeze.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. We got connected rather recently, I think maybe about a month ago. You had messaged me on Instagram, actually, totally unrelated to the podcast, public speaking, I think it was. And we just kind of chatted from there. And your story reminded me a lot of my own. Actually, I kind of feel like we have almost the same trajectory and career goals. So I was like, you know what, why don't you come on the podcast and we can bring the discussion on here?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really cool to connect with those with similar backgrounds, similar goals. I mean, there's not a lot of us out there, so made sense.
No, there's not. Yeah, definitely not a lot of us out there. I think it's growing, but I think at the present time, there isn't. As I mentioned before, I hit record. I think having this podcast really is a great opportunity to bridge a conversational gap between ourselves, physicians, and really the healthcare industry in general. I think it's important that we have a voice in all of this.
Absolutely. When we've been through the ringer, we can definitely guide other people who are going through the same thing without having all those same hiccups.
I'd like to first talk a little bit about overcoming asthma challenges. Liz, it's such a pleasure to have you on. And you shared that for a long time. Asthma held you back from pursuing long distance running. Can you take us back to those years when asthma was at its worst and tell us how it affected your daily life and your fitness journey?
Yes. Actually, it's interesting because as a child, I was diagnosed around when I was 2. I don't remember it being anything crazy, but I also had an adult, my dad, who was a pediatrician, managing everything. So becoming an adult was definitely a challenge, especially with viral exposures. So, I mean, of course, the random hiccups as a kid, I probably avoided things that involved running because I had that limiting factor. It's kind of a regret now knowing that I could have pushed through that and become an athlete younger, but stuff like dance seemed safer rather than, soccer or cross country or track. And also it was no barn with horses as well. So having that allergy, it was constantly a reminder of what my limiting factor was. So unfortunately, running just wasn't in the picture at the time. Fast forward to adulthood. It was, kind of almost self-management, right? I had my dad in my ear, your asthma is not managed. And then after having kids, it got worse and worse, right? Because they're the occupational hazard. Working at a gym, having the kid in the childcare center, it was just constant exposure. So And I feel like the worse flare-ups you have leading to bronchitis and pneumonia, the worse subsequent flare-ups are. So it almost would be like a cold, for most people, they get the runny nose, scratchy throat. For me, straight to the chest. I'm sure you can relate to that.
Oh, yes.
So it's never just a cold. You see your kids, the sniffles, and you're like, oh no, it's coming. Right. So then, having very severe flare-ups, it would take me out for months. When I was teaching group fitness and having clients in the gym, I would have to take so much time off, get everything covered, diligently track my daily activity, and slowly build up to the point that I could even go up the stairs at work and not take the elevator. And then the pandemic happened. So I actually went on medical leave because I didn't know what would happen if I caught COVID, being in, a vulnerable position with regular colds and viruses. Yeah, it was a pretty tumultuous time, multiple times a year. And the flare-ups increased year after year with each kid. And that got me to a point where it was just not sustainable anymore.
I can relate to a lot of what you said. And so you had mentioned horses and allergies.
Yeah.
That is the worst for me. And I have allergic asthma. So if I'm around a horse, not only do my eyes, completely seal shut, but if I don't take my inhaler, I'm on the ground in no time at all. It gets really bad.
Right.
And then you had mentioned as well that it never really is just a cold. I feel like that's something a lot of people don't think about. And when I was a kid and I would get a cold and I would miss school, even my teachers were like, and I know they were thinking this, like, oh, you're missing school due to a cold. Yeah, but it's a lot different for me. And a cold for me, as you said, goes to my chest, turns into pneumonia. And it's never a good thing. Best case scenario, I'm at home. Worst case scenario, most likely scenario, I'm in the hospital with it.
Right. And then growing up, as a kid, it's almost like there's a level that's normal. Like you're almost desensitized to the fact that you have to take a nebulizer. I always had a inhaler in the nurse's office, whether I wanted to take it or not. That was a whole other deal. I just was kind of in the, I'm fine. Right. But yeah, at the barn, I had to have an inhaler and hay fever as well. So that was another one where just constant exposure to straw and hay and the animals. It was just all of it at once. So yeah, it was a pretty rough situation. But at the same time, like the viral exposures tend to be like the biggest trigger, which for sure they were a problem when I was a kid, but they got much, much worse throughout the years.
I do feel like, as you said, we are desensitized to the fact that we need to take our inhaler on a regular basis or our nebulizer on a regular basis. Again, I feel like, at least for me, there was such a stigma growing up around asthma that although I had to take it all the time and every single day, I typically wouldn't take it in front of other people. It was like a whole different part of me that existed that nobody else really knew about. And I tried to hide it as best as I could. Now, as I'm older, of course, I embrace it because it's part of my brand. But when I was a kid, it was very different. And it's easy to get complacent, as you said, and think that this is normal for me. This is normal. I don't know anything else. And that's really not a good thing, especially if you don't have good control of your lungs. And it feels like it's normal to not have good control of your lungs. And then when you do eventually get control of your lungs, it's like, oh man, I can't believe I lived like that.
Right. And just all the little things too with, like you're desensitized until it's a big problem and then you're super self-conscious about it. Like I remember, just events during cold and flu season where, there's that lingering cough and people look at you even more so in the last few years. You're just like, and you feel like you have to explain yourself like, oh, it's worse than it sounds. But then like, is it, you can't really explain. It's like, meaning I'm not contagious, for them. So they feel better about their situation rather than it is really bad. Right.
So I know you've gone through some major changes in your asthma treatment plan. What was the turning point that helped you finally get your asthma under control? And how did that shift allow you to return to running?
Yes. Okay. So the big year of flare-ups is what got me to this point, having a very scary incident in the hospital. So 2022 in December was my 8th flare-up in 14 months. And it was just a constant cycle of corticosteroids and then immunosuppression, right? So just constantly. And I've had a pretty, I don't want to say a good system, but it was a system that worked for the time being where I would have a burst or a little bit longer and then on to the next flare up, right? So that was just kind of the way I was skating above the water or just below the water, whatever you want to call it. And then I also got really good at comparing my situation to other people that were going through worse things. Like, oh, it's not that bad. Like we were just talking about the desensitization of the whole situation. So I had a friend that had a strange or rare tumor in her spinal cord, and she became paralyzed from the waist down. And this was right around the time when I'd been on prednisone for maybe 3 or 4 weeks at this point, high doses, not like a little burst. This was high doses for weeks, and it was not working. So I remember there was a meal train for her, and I was standing in line at the grocery store. It was right before the holidays, big snowstorm coming. I'm feeling like absolute crap. And then I'm standing there and thinking, wait a minute, I need my own meal train. I'm in this situation where I should be doing this, standing on my feet around all these people. And too, when you're just irritable because you're on corticosteroids and it's just everything is coming to a head. And that was my point of realization. We're like, this is not right. I need help. And unfortunately, my primary care was not able to help me. I kept reaching out and they said, oh, do you have a fever? No, I don't have a fever because the prednisone that I've been taking for weeks is suppressing it. And I was taking the nebulizer every 4 hours just to stay afloat. I wanted antibiotics. I knew I had a bacterial infection. Do you know that shift where you just feel your energy drain and you're not hungry? And it's just, that it's progressed, right? So I was there for a while and finally reached out to my specialist after going to a clinic at the grocery store to have somebody actually listen to my lungs and say, okay, you have pneumonia, you need antibiotics. But those antibiotics didn't work. So that was okay, I just need antibiotics and I'll be fine. They didn't work. That's when I'm like, all right, time to pull out the big guns, go back to my specialist. My allergist was unfortunately somebody who I only reserved for situations where things got really bad, where I got pneumonia and I felt like I couldn't get myself out with the typical course that I would do. So finally went back to him, and he's this brilliant 75-year-old doctor. He's not allowed to retire because he just does things the old school way, and they just don't make him like that anymore. Reminds me of my dad and my grandfather, right? So takes notes, right? And his little notebook doesn't, do the medical records. He has someone do that for him. So finally went back to him, walked into the office, and he's like, why are you this bad? Like he was legit mad that I had gotten to that point and was like that for so long. He's like, haven't you been seeing a doctor? Yes, I have, right? But unfortunately, when you have a clear chest x-ray initially, that's almost like, okay, you're good. But they didn't have me back for one. So he said, you need to go to the hospital first. You need to get some IV steroids just to really get to the source and some more imaging to see what's going on. And then when you come back, after we get you through this, we're going to talk about some solutions that are going to make you so much better. And he's like, why has nobody told you about these therapies that can help prevent these types of flare-ups? And I'm like, I don't know. Even having a medical family, right? I should have all the resources. I consider myself a resourceful person. So it's just like how, I was also flabbergasted. Why do I not know about therapies that can help prevent this? Ended up going to the ER, and I had him call ahead because I was so worried that I wouldn't be treated when I got there because of how the last month had gone with, just constantly reaching out to healthcare providers. It's not like I was complacent and just letting things get bad. I was looking for help and did not get the help. So I get to the hospital. He's like, they are not sending you home. I promise you. I'm going to talk to the doctor. But the wait in the ER was absolutely ridiculous. I saw a man bleeding and it was going through a rag, and he sat there and ended up leaving and going elsewhere because that's how packed it was. My blood oxygen saturation. So I didn't bring an inhaler with me. I took the nebulizer before I left. I was there 4.5 hours, which, like that 4-hour mark, right, is when if you're that bad, you gotta have something on hand. Mm-hmm. And I kept going over to the station to get my blood oxygen saturation, and it kept dropping. And I think 92 is the level where they consider an emergency. And I was just hovering around 93. And the guy over there's like, oh, that's good. I'm like, it's not good. Not at all. When you're used to being like 99, 100, right, on a regular day. So I was just waiting basically to be in a medical emergency and get back. Finally, I got back. They had already done blood work. So they were taking blood work before you got back to a room in the ER, fortunately in triage. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of doctors rush in and they say, hey, we need to get you back for a CT and rule out a pulmonary embolism because your inflammation factors are so high, one called a D-dimer. So I was kind of belligerent then. And I'm like, listen, I didn't come for that. I just came to get some IVs and get out of here. That's what I told my kids. I had my husband take my son to basketball practice, business as usual, right? The show must go on. Just, again, downplaying my situation. So I got a little upset with them. Like, no, I didn't come for a pulmonary embolism. I came for, treating my asthma and getting through this. And they're like, well, we have to do this, right? We have to take you back and get a CT, which in hindsight was a really great diagnostic scan because they could see I also had RSV. So they could see RSV almost like an infant's lungs, right? That's how bad it got with the inflammation and also aspiration pneumonia. So I had a lot going on, but it was good to know so I could finally get treated, get on the right antibiotic. And they said typically they would have admitted me, but the hospital was full. So I would have just been sitting in the ER overnight. They said, we're in touch with your doctor and he's going to check on you in the morning. If things aren't better, you're coming right back. So he promised us that he would check on you and make sure everything's going in the right direction. So I was fortunate to go home and rest in my own bed and not just sit in the ER. And then my husband also had a real talk with me at that time because I had been downplaying the situation so long. He's like, this, you have to be here. You have to take care of this. You cannot let it get to this point, right? So that was kind of the turning point where I realized yes, I could have died from this, right? It could have gotten to a point where it's really hard to realize that in the moment when things get that bad. So that was kind of my turnaround point. Got through the flare-up, got back to my doctor. We talked through some options for biologic medication. And then that was, I think it was January 20th, 2023. That's when I'm always going to remember that date because I was like, okay, I'm hopeful. This has to work. Things have to get better. And they did. After figuring out which one would work best for me, started it and had to look back.
So talking about the long waits in the ER and how, you have to be below a certain threshold of blood oxygen to get into the back, really, to see the doctor. That's something we face here in Canada as well. Last time I was in the ER, I actually had to leave to go to my truck because it was an 8-hour wait and I needed to take my nebulizer. So I plugged it into my truck and I took it out there because I wasn't seeing the doctor soon enough. That's a big issue. Yeah, that's a big issue. And as you mentioned before too, letting it get to that point where, your husband has a real talk with you, your doctor has a real talk with you. Well, I mean, it's challenging, right? Because it feels kind of normal for us. And not anymore. I mean, when I go through flare-ups like that, which do still happen on occasion, it doesn't really feel normal to me anymore. But at one point in time, it did. It was every day that I woke up, I felt like that. If not every day, every other day, you know what I mean? It was really challenging. So my mindset was if I had a good 3 days, then really I felt healthy. I was good to go, but that's not the case. So that complacency really causes urgency and it could wind up very badly for someone like you or myself.
Right. And, and also you almost desensitize it too, because if the rest of your life in between seems relatively normal, right, then you present yourself also to physicians that way. And if you seem like you're thriving when you go for your regular checkups and you're like, oh, I'm running, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, but you're not really thriving in the way that you could be, it almost, because they're used to seeing very sick people all the time, right? People who don't have those, I guess, positive times in between. So almost is almost like a facade with how you actually are when you seem healthy in between.
That's so true. So let's segue now into running and resilience. You did mention that you completed a half marathon last year and on a full marathon is in your sights. And I will say that's incredible having done that myself. Can you tell us a little bit about the experience of running your first half marathon after years of struggling with asthma? And how did it feel to achieve something that you thought once wasn't possible?
Yes. That was funny because the first time I did one in 2009, it was one of those things where I'm never doing this again. I thought I was in good shape. Didn't get the mileage accumulation that I really needed to, I thought, because I was doing bodybuilding at the time. And you have to do a lot of intense cardio. So I'm like, oh, I'm in good shape. I can do this. Right. Mm-hmm. And then ended up messing up myself pretty good. It was one of those I'm going to run with a friend. And then, oh, wait, I've got goals. So I need to take off. And I ran so fast for the last 8 miles that I got, GI bleeding. My joints hurt like crazy. I actually followed the full marathoners and had to turn around and backtrack because I was in such a zone trying to finish that I added extra to it. So I did not have a good experience the first time. I didn't do it right. So this time I'm like, all right, I'm actually going to do this right. I'm going to progress. And it was really cool to get past that 3 to 4 mile mark because that was where I was stuck, right? I could not really seem to get past that 3 to 4 mile because of my lung capacity and constantly getting taken out, right? I would have to build up every single flare up, go out. All right, I can walk this fast. All right, I can walk this far. I can walk this long. And then, all right, we're going to start running. We're going to start running a little bit at a time. I'm sure you can relate to that little buildup after having your lung capacity being completely taken out. So what was really cool after the biologic was how much faster I recovered, even being in that severe of a flare up. So, but yes, first half marathon in 15 years in October. And I did get a PR because the last time I had to backtrack and went longer than 13.1. But yeah, and it was kind of one of those things after I finished, like, you know what, I want to do this again. So that was a really good feeling.
For you, that's incredible. And do you plan on running your first full marathon as locally as well? Assuming you ran your half marathon locally.
Yes. The half marathon in full that is probably my favorite is benefiting our children's hospital. One of my kids has spent a lot of time there, so it's near and dear to my heart. I like to do a fundraiser for that, for the department that took care of him when he was hospitalized in his first year a lot. It's kind of, serves another purpose as well. And we'll see. If it's this year, I don't know. I'm going to get through the summer, build up my mileage, but you know how, there's that doubt. Are things actually going to work out? I'm somebody who gets insurance for every race because there's always that, well, what if, right? Because that's how you're used to living. So I don't know if that'll ever go away, but there's always going to be some kind of like, I don't know, what if, right? Is this actually happening? Is this actually working out?
Always the what if. My first full marathon that I had signed up for was actually virtual because of COVID. And I finished a half marathon. I couldn't do the full. I wasn't in shape. I bit off more than I could chew. So I paid the full price. I ran the half and that was fine. And then actually my most recent full marathon turned into a half marathon as well because my knee gave out at 12 kilometers. So not, due to my asthma, which is terrific, but I mean, we still ruin our knees by running. And unfortunately, that's what happened. 12 kilometers in, my knee gave out and I ended up, kind of walking, jogging until the halfway point, and then I called it quits there. So yeah, as you said, anything can happen. I've never gotten insurance. I probably should.
Yeah. I mean, every time they offer, it's like, what, $10 or $12. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get that just because, yeah. But it was funny too. Like I had a lot of reminders during that first half marathon of how far I've come. So, it's in the morning and with the fall, you never know what you're going to get. It was about 39 degrees. So it was cold enough that, that typically may have bothered my airways. A lot of car exhaust from police cars sitting on the side of the road. Like, sure, it made me like a little foggy, but nothing that was interfering with my running. They had fireworks at the beginning, so there was smoke in the air. Just a lot of little things that typically would have been triggers and allowed me to not do that were just right there. And I just kept thinking, wow, how cool is this? I can just push through these things. And then I even saw somebody's inhaler on the road that they had just tossed at the beginning of the race. And I saw that. I'm like, wow. And I don't even need to be carrying this around. This is really, really cool. Just all those little things, right? Just made me really grateful to be in that position.
You also coach clients on fitness, weight loss, and health transformation. How does your personal journey with asthma inform the way you approach coaching and helping others?
Yeah, so it really, having my own chronic condition, right? I think probably a very large percentage of the world population has a chronic condition that limits them in some sort of way. So meeting people where they're at, going through a lot of this has shown me that sometimes, even if you cannot relate 100% to what something's going through, listening to them and how they talk, listening to what maybe they used to be able to do that they want to be able to do again, definitely meeting where they're at with their current condition and showing them a way. So I think sometimes I forget how much sharing your situation can really inspire somebody and show them that it's possible to not let that hold you back, that it's not defining you. You can continue to push through barriers. And sometimes we just have to believe that to even try. So yeah, it's really helped me relate to clients. And then also, with the medical system, there's a lot of unfortunate ways that it's run. And it's, in the States, it's very limited to the time that you can be with your doctors. I know in Canada too, it's probably very similar with, you have this window and a lot of the time they're treating, right? And they don't have time to go through your history and make sure that all your lifestyle factors are taken care of to support prevention, symptom management for anything that you're going through. So having someone in their corner to go through almost like a preparation for doctor's appointments. Like, what do you hope to get out of this? What questions do you want to ask your doctor? What do you want to address? And almost prepping them so that they feel confident going in to advocate for themselves as something that it's been rewarding to do for clients. It's not something that I really thought about before when I was training in the gym, counting reps, making people throw up, back in the day when it was like, work harder, and if you're not working hard enough, then you're not going to get results. Now it's kind of taking a different approach. Meet people where they're at, help them, have a roadmap or a blueprint to where they want to be, and then help support them on that end as well.
You had mentioned overcoming challenges and, now not just overcoming your own challenges, but allowing other people to see you do that so you can inspire them. And my first marathon, I felt like I had kind of hit that right on the bullseye. So I knew I was inspiring other people. I was so happy to do it. And that high kind of stuck with me. And it's why I continue doing what I'm doing, because I don't feel like I just overcame one challenge to learn how to run, but I feel like with asthma, I'm overcoming those challenges kind of every single day. So if I can continue doing that, then I can continue inspiring other people. So that's why I do what I do. I think that's huge. I think what you're doing is huge. And I'm really excited to see what you do going forward.
Thank you. Thank you. And yes, inspiring other people too is so rewarding. It's funny. I had a friend just reach out. I ran into her at the pickup line at school yesterday, and she's like, "Did you go for a run?" I'm like, No, I'm running a half, some tapering this week. And she's like, "When?" Like, this weekend. She's like, "Really?" And I told her I had just registered for it because I was trying to figure out my kids' schedule because, their stuff comes first. And then, so I had two to pick from, one Saturday or one Sunday. I picked the Saturday one, and she's like, "Well, wait a minute." I could see her wheels turning because she's a runner. And then she shot me a message last night. She's like, "I signed up. We're going to run. I'll drive." I'm like, okay. And, it's just, and she's like, "Thank you for giving me, some kind of excitement, something to look forward to." And that just meant a lot. So you never know how much you're going to affect people. Sometimes we're like, I don't want to feel like I'm bragging, or I don't want to make people feel bad about what they're not doing. But I think it's more of a net positive to keep sharing what you're doing, because then, people, it's contagious.
I saw that on your Instagram story, actually. I did it because you're a bad influence.
Yeah, I'm a bad influence. Like, I'll take it. I mean, it's not like she's sedentary. She is a runner. She's not quite where I would like, want someone to be to attempt it, but she's being realistic about her situation. So I'll encourage her if that's what she wants to do. But I'm like, but okay, you're going to have fun, and then we're going to do it again, but you're going to be prepared.
So let's move on now, Liz, to navigating professional growth and public speaking. Beyond your fitness and health coaching, you're also a public speaker. You've spoken at events for organizations like Amgen and AstraZeneca, and you've even had a promotional shoot recently with AstraZeneca. What's it been like to step into that role and advocate for asthma patients? What's it been like to step into the role of a speaker and advocate for asthma patients?
It's been weird. There's definitely a lot of imposter syndrome there because it's not something that I ever envisioned doing. But at the same time, it's one of those things where you're nervous and you think about all that could go wrong, but then you actually get to it and you turn it on and you do it. So that was really, really weird to be able to do that. And it was, daunting because the first situation, it was streaming to 27,000 people. The second situation, there was 400 in a room. But then getting the feedback of how much that had affected people was really, really cool and rewarding. It just kind of showed me that I'm kind of on the right path here. And then doing the promotional shoot too. Also, I had people guiding me with how to do things. Somebody there fixing my hair constantly, saying things over and over and over again to the point that, like for compliance reasons, right? To make sure that it's FDA compliant, you're not over promising. Mm-hmm. And there were little things there too that were just really eye-opening that I hadn't thought of. But to be an influence in a broader way to reach more people, like I love working with people one-on-one. That's very rewarding, but to have an opportunity to reach out to more people and maybe to help them think about their situation. When I spoke to some sales reps with AstraZeneca earlier in March, one lady came up to me afterwards and she said, "You've inspired me to take care of my own chronic condition that I've been brushing under the rug." So just to hear somebody say that was super rewarding and just reminded me like, there's a reason for this. And you're helping people and all different levels, and you never know to what level, right? So that's been a really cool opportunity.
I can relate to imposter syndrome. I can relate to feeling that. I still feel it every single time I get up and talk to people. when I do a social post, when I do a LinkedIn post, I
Yes.
feel like I'm sitting, I'm basking in that imposter syndrome. I don't think, honestly, it's going to break anytime soon. So I'm going to continue to feel it. But I guess as you get these compliments, as you mentioned, or these comments, or these people come up to you and say how you've touched them, it certainly makes you realize you're doing the right thing. So maybe I'm actually pretty good at this. And one of my last speeches, I had one of the hosts. So we had a host of a local news station that was hosting this event. And she came up to me afterwards. And so I had always wondered if, am I a good storyteller? And she came up to me afterwards and she said, you need to write a book. And that made me feel so good about myself. And it kind of helped me realize that, okay, maybe I am okay at storytelling. Maybe I am onto something, and maybe I should continue doing what I'm doing. And I feel like that's kind of what helps you push forward as well and kind of get over that hump, which is imposter syndrome, because I think it's only natural to feel it.
Right. When you're vulnerable and you're just out there and, anything could happen. Right. Yeah.
You mentioned that public speaking wasn't something you originally envisioned yourself doing. How has that journey shaped you personally and professionally?
Well, it's definitely something that's scary. So that's something that I actually tell other people to do, is do something that scares you because it makes other things seem easier. Right. So that is one thing that scares me. And like you were saying, you don't know if it'll ever go away. I don't think it will ever go away too, but having that chance to do something scary, because, if you think about things that you do, hosting a podcast, running races, that it's, that's scary. So what could be scarier than that? Speaking in front of a room of people, right? So, and everyone's different. Every situation's different. But yeah, like you were saying, getting that feedback is really cool. So that's helped push me forward, to encourage me to share more in different ways, because you never know who you're gonna, touch, whose life is gonna be made better from your story and from you sharing.
So I find before I get up and I speak, or whatever it is that I'm doing, so you have two emotions. You have, being nervous and being excited. I feel like it's the same emotion. It's just whether or not you want to, balance on that nerve side of it, or aim more towards being excited. And I find in those situations now, I just say, you know what? I'm excited. I'm roaring to do this. Let's do it. And I feel like that helps me get through, but I am nervous. But I just, I guess I just see it. I program myself now to see it as excitement.
Right. Have you heard of power poses before?
No, never.
Okay. Somebody had told me about that. She said she was doing some kind of keynote speaking, and somebody gave her the advice to do power poses. And you're supposed to hold this certain arms up or hands on your hips. Look it up afterwards, because there's some kind of psychological benefit to preparing you and just making you feel ready to do that. It's really interesting. So I looked it up and I gave it a try, and it may have helped, but I don't think it hurt.
Can't hurt. I'm gonna try it next time. I'll look it up first and read a little bit about it. So let's move on now, Liz, to health coaching and client success. You've worked with a variety of clients, from those focused on weight loss to fitness competitions, and now you help people with asthma find ways to live healthier lives without reporting to extreme measures. Can you walk us through your coaching philosophy and why you emphasize ditching the diet mentality and focusing on sustainable habits?
Absolutely. Well, as somebody who has been through it, tried it all, right, and as many people do with yo-yo dieting, right? You think about the next fad and, that's why I don't have the results that I want. I need to do this. I need to, restrict myself. And having been through that and seeing how it didn't work led me to a more flexible approach. All foods fit. When we have a scarcity mindset around food and our body's hungry, which the pendulum's going to swing further back the other way. And that's why people have that lose-gain cycle. When people cut out foods to the point that they put them on this pedestal and they're forbidden, same thing, it's going to go the other way. And then we're going to overconsume those and not feel in control. So finding ways to have them in moderation so they no longer have the same power, right? So, and a lot of times people tell me when they were a kid, we weren't allowed to have this in the house. So then I would eat it in secret. So it's some very common themes there with, and it's never too late. That's what I tell people. It's never too late to take control of your situation and implement these things. So taking, just your typical client, everybody's different. Everybody has their own concerns, their own chronic conditions, limiting factors, things that they believe about themselves. But I'd say a big commonality is diet culture and what they've been through with that. So changing their thinking. So we use a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy types of techniques to change your thinking and challenge your beliefs and try things, right? So it's really cool when somebody messages me like, hey, I got dessert and I only ate half and I don't feel bad about it. So things like that are way more exciting than, oh, I dropped a pound, right? So also detaching from the scale. People put too much weight into the scale. So finding other ways to find wins, getting stronger. Now, I don't take a lot of hard stances and things because I kind of get obsessed with the nuance in the gray area just to include all of the different types of situations, right? But one thing I will take a hard stance on is strength training, getting yourself metabolically healthy. Because if you think about all this dieting that people do throughout time, your body adjusts to that burn. So then when they try to go back to eating normal, their metabolic rate has dropped and they're gaining weight. So it's just this kind of vicious cycle that happens throughout time. So strength training, allowing yourself to build up your metabolism, learning to eat at levels that aren't, causing that negative adaptation, and also learning to move your body more and detaching from all that excessive dieting, excessive exercise that people think that they need to do to get results, and taking that more moderate approach and feeling good and putting their health first, I guess, first and foremost, finding a plan that fits their life rather than trying to make their life fit a plan that isn't working. So I hope that all made sense.
It made perfect sense. And I love that, finding a plan that really fits your lifestyle. And I can relate to exactly what you're saying, because when I'm in marathon training mode, my diet is super crazy. It's super restrictive, which is, maybe something you shouldn't do when you're running 70 to 100 kilometers a week, but super restrictive. And I'll go from, 240 pounds to 180 pounds in no time at all, because I'm really restricting myself. But then when I run that marathon, I get that PR that I wanted. The next few days, I'm like, I'm just going to eat whatever I want. And then really the weight starts going right back. And then I cut back my running a little bit because I'm no longer training. That's not sustainable. My weight goes right back. So right now I'm sitting at, 230 pounds, whatever it is. And I have a race to run next month. It's only a half marathon, but even then it's going to be, quite hard. And then I run a full marathon in October. So getting back in that zone, as you said, it's not sustainable. So finding a way to make it into a lifestyle is huge. And right. I wish I had an easier time doing it, because it's taxing on the body and it's taxing on the mind. And I've always suffered from looking in the mirror and seeing the person that I'm not. And I feel like it's just not sustainable.
That's a hard one. Comparison. That's another thing too, is like whether you're comparing yourself to somebody else who has a completely different journey, genetics, background, or to yourself at a different point in your life, that doesn't necessarily serve you in the moment. And I've been there when I did bodybuilding competitions, getting to levels of leanness that are not healthy. You can't unsee that. You're always holding yourself to that standard. And I've worked through that, but that's still, just like an ugly thing that's there and rears its ugly head. And it's more about challenging that in a moment. And, that was cool that I did that. And that was cool that I looked like that, but this is my life. These are my circumstances and I'm going to make the most out of these now. And you can change how, it's really hard to change and it's daunting to change, because even though you're uncomfortable, it's comfortable to stay the same. So yeah, I can 100% relate to what you're saying.
So looking ahead, and we'll talk about expanding on opportunities and advocacy. So as your work continues to grow, you're opening new doors in terms of business and professional opportunities. You've spoken about your excitement for the AstraZeneca project and your goal of raising awareness about asthma care. Can you share what's next for you, and what are you hoping to achieve as you continue to build your personal brand and reach more people with your story?
Yes. So I'm always open to new opportunities, like I've done with Amgen and AstraZeneca. It was, like I said, it was very rewarding and brought a whole new, opened my mind to the possibilities of helping people and spreading a message. But so yeah, I'm always open to more opportunities like that. And I hope that my contacts there will keep reaching out and come up with some new things. And I can't wait to see the final product of the AstraZeneca product, because it's going to be on social media. I think their YouTube channel. And we did recreate like a cartoon version of a commercial, which will be really cool. Looking forward to seeing that. And then also, with my professional business, I love finding clients. I want to fine tune my marketing to find people who are my ideal clients. So having clients that are very similar. So maybe they used to be an athlete or they used to run and they stopped for whatever reason and they really want to get back into it. Those are like near and dear to my heart and just give me life. So I had a client run a half marathon last weekend and it was her first one after having kids, and she hit a PR. And she felt great because, we really targeted her nutrition and her training to get her there with plenty of time. And just, helping people do that. Another client, she got back into running after hearing some negative things about her weight, that she could never be a runner. And now she's running again and she's just embracing it and she feels so empowered, right? So finding people who are ready for change, ready for help, that really align with my skill set and abilities is really where I want to go. And instead of, sometimes we find people who aren't ready for change, right? And there's always going to be a numbers game with people who work out or don't work out, but I want to be able to really fine tune things to find more people who are ready to be helped and can appreciate what I can do for them.
I think it's important too that you said for people that are ready to be helped, because we might not all be ready. We might have to hit that, I don't want to say rock bottom, but that point in our lives when we realize, you know what, I'm ready to change. I'm ready to do something and I'm going to seek some help to do it. So I love that you put it that way.
Yes. And one course that I did, it was a psychology of health behavior change course I did a couple of years ago. The lady who led that, she said something that really resonated with me. And I do my best to apply this, is that somebody can always be helped, right? It's not up to the person. Sometimes you have to pull it out of them. You have to know the right questions to ask. You have to know what path to set them on, help them align their expectations of something that can stick and, pivot when they need to, right? Have you heard of the trans theoretical model? This is something that's been coming up in my business a lot with clients.
No, never.
No. So it's the cycle of change where you're at with your brain. Like either you're not ready, you're not thinking about a change, or you're thinking about making a change, or you're in the action phase where you're trying to figure out what fits and kind of getting into your groove. And then the maintenance phase where it's like just part of your life, right? But we can always backslide. And the reasons why we backslide is because we're not prepared. Either our expectations are not where they should be. We're not pivoting our plan to fit our life at the moment. When something big happens, we have this all or nothing mindset of how things have to be, and we let that push us back. Or the plan isn't sustainable, right? So those are reasons why people get pushed back. So kind of figuring out where somebody is on that cycle and then helping that push them along is key, because everybody's somewhere on that cycle and they can always be helped in some sort of way.
So before we move on to the final question, Liz, I just want to open the floor for you to plug anything you might want to plug.
So I love anybody who is looking to better their situation, improve their fitness level, need some nutrition education, how to apply to their situation, to reach out for a free consult. There's always a free consult for anybody who wants to have a conversation. So reach out to me on Instagram is probably the best way. Direct message. Let me know that you heard this podcast episode and it resonated with you, or if something just resonated with you and you want to let me know, please reach out for that too. And I do have a free resource for anybody who is interested in learning more about strength training, especially runners. So I call this my stride method for my running clients. It's strength and, oh my gosh, let me start that over again. Okay. So I call this my stride method for my runner clients, to incorporate strength training, but not to the point that it's going to make them so sore that it's competing with their running goals. So stride stands for strength, resilience, injury defense, and elevation. So I have an 8-week progressive program. It's an upper and a lower body workout. It's a bonus core workout and some mobility ideas and how to progress for 8 weeks through this. For anybody who wants it, just reach out. I will send it your way. And it kind of takes the guesswork out of it so you can start to add some strength training in to complement your running and help you get stronger.
Thank you so much, Liz. I will leave as much information as I can find in the show notes as well for our listeners to get, including your Instagram and your Facebook page.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we'll move on to the final question now. I do ask every guest the same question to close the episode. Whether you have asthma or not, every breath we take is a gift, a reminder of our resilience, our drive to keep going, and our power to define our own limits. With a single breath, you have the potential to move mountains and change the world. So with that in mind, again, I have one final question for you. If you had only one last breath, but with it the power to influence the world, what would your message be?
It would be take responsibility and ownership for your situation. I had a recent mentor tell me nobody's coming to save you. And it's so true. And you can have people who maybe try to save you, right? My dad was telling me, your asthma is not managed, you need a better plan. But nobody can want something more than you want it for yourself. So while you can be inspired by people, you have to inspire yourself. You have to take action to better your situation. Don't exhaust resources, continue to push, whether it's for, your financial situation, whether it's for your business, whether it's for a health condition. Just keep taking ownership and responsibility because that's your life and nobody's going to do that for you.
Liz, thank you for joining me today and sharing your incredible insights. Your dedication to overcoming asthma, helping others with their health journeys, and your growth as a public speaker is truly inspiring. To all of our listeners, if this episode resonated with you, please share it, subscribe, and leave a review. You can learn more about Liz's work and her health coaching at facebook.com/FitHub or by following her on Instagram at Liz_Radinovic. Also, for each new episode, including this one, an in-depth blog is released with additional insights and resources. Be sure to check out my Substack at wespeak.ca/Beyond the Wheeze for these blogs, along with regular updates, resources, and more on asthma, lung health, and other related topics. All links can be found below in the show notes. Until next time, keep pushing forward, keep breathing deep, and never let anything hold you back.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Wheeze. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share. Follow us on Instagram at Beyond the Wheeze or follow me at the Asthma Runner for more updates. Keep breathing strong and remember, your potential has no limits. Until next time.